guys, Chari5 here. October 3rd, Day of Regan. Pazuzu Regan, to be exact, from The Exorcist, one of the most pants-shittingly scary horror films of all time. I forget exactly what year this movie came out, and it spawned a lot of sequels, spin-offs. I don't really know what to call them in this case, because they're technically tied. They have the Exorcist name, or the exorcism of, sort of type of movies that have, I think, become really popular as of late. Like in the late 2000s, there were a lot of movies coming out with that sort of name tagging. But I do believe the original The Exorcist came out in the 70s. I forget exactly what year it was. It might have been 76. I don't remember. But I actually did watch The Exorcist when I was younger. It was during a time. You'll recall that I said that I was afraid of a lot of things growing up, and it was very well known within my family that I was very faint of heart. I didn't have the courage to watch a lot of scary things. Even things that weren't too scary would frighten me, I think, due to my anxiety. And The Exorcist was one of the first movies that I kind of used to get over my anxiety. Not that I don't have it anymore. It's just, I do tackle it by doing things that make me get out of my comfort zone. And it helped me a lot. I think it was a very good first step. I remember my aunt and my cousin were watching it together. For whatever reason, I don't remember exactly why, but they were watching it. And I was at their house, and it might have just been on TV, I don't know. And I just sat there and watched some of the scenes with them. And I remember thinking the start of the movie, the first part, was really slow, really boring. Like, nothing was really happening. And to be fair, I think a lot of older horror movies are that way, and a lot of more contemporary movies are way too fast-paced. Like, they get into the danger really, really quick. But back in the day, the horror was really, really slow. Like, they were really building up to something, even if it lasted only a few minutes. And what really got them was the fact that I watched the very first scene where, God, it actually even feels uncomfortable saying, Regan's masturbating with the cross. Oh, God. Saying it out loud does not make that scene easy to describe. But it's that scene, and, when Regan's voice changes for the very first time into, like, a deeper man voice, which probably has my favorite line from the whole movie, "Do you know what she did, your cunting daughter?" Because, how do you make cunt, and I apologize for the language, but how do you make that a verb? But, and I don't know how young I was. Like, I was a little bit too young to be watching that film, and yet old enough to know what it was, or what it was about. And maybe not old enough to know what she was doing with the cross at the time, because it doesn't really look like that. It just looks like she's stabbing herself, which I guess in reality is technically what that is. But I remember I was still really scared, like I was still terrified of what was going on, and my aunt and my cousin just look over at me, and they're a little bit, proud in the sense that they're like, wow, you actually sat through that and you didn't cry or you didn't, like, freak out or anything. And all I did, like, as a joke, I just, like, I had my eyes wide open and I fell over on the couch. But at the same, like, I did that as a joke, but at the same time, my heart was pounding. Like, I was still, like, really taken aback by that scene, and it probably isn't even the strongest scene in the film. Well, I don't know. To me, like, that's really where the movie starts to pick up, and, I think from the moment Regan comes down, like, with her hands behind her head, like, you don't need to see anything before that. Context doesn't help the film at all. because I would later come to know that she's called Pazuzu Regan because that's the name of the demon that possesses her. And I think that's more so explained in the second film, I think, which I never saw, and I have no interest in watching because apparently it's really, really bad. But it's still it features Linda Blair, and she gets possessed again, except she doesn't look as gross as she did in the first film. And to me, one of the really interesting things I love learning trivia about movies I've seen, and learning a little bit more about The Exorcist. To me was incredible because it was such apparently like such a strong film for the time that it actually disgusted people, and people in the theaters were vomiting, and like it really goes to show, like, wow, this was that strong back in the day. This was seen as like incredibly terrifying, like, wow, especially for films like of today's standards. And I was watching a top 10 of videos that like are banned and stuff, and a lot of them, they might be really gory and strong, but especially so for their time. And it makes me wonder, like, if these movies had come out today, if those movies that are banned had come out today, would they be received, with such disdain, with such disgust? I feel like if The Exorcist were released today, it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. But yeah, I think probably one of my first experiences with technically The Exorcist was when I was growing up, and I watched the opening segment of Scary Movie, which still scared the crap out of me. Even like the parody version of The Exorcist's design still scared the crap out of me, and I couldn't watch the opening scene because of it. Sometimes, even though I shouldn't have been watching those movies when I was a kid, nonetheless, I always watched inappropriate shit as a kid, and it never really affected me. At least I don't think. Anyway, this drawing, I was terrified of even starting this because I didn't know how to go about it, and a lot of the facial features to me at the beginning, they were really turning me off in the sense that I didn't really want to do the drawing anymore because I was like, everything is looking awful and it's not looking like her, and it's what I've always said. Like, if you have a drawing or whichever medium you're working with and you feel like maybe you're not doing it right, or you feel turned off by the project, or you kind of don't want to do it, I say go for it anyway, because you'll probably end up doing something really good. And in my case, spoiler alert, I guess, I do like how this piece turns out for the most part. There are a few things here and there, as with my previous drawings, which I look back on and I don't particularly like. Like, there are things that, looking back on it, I would fix. And technically I still could, but, what's done is done. But, just press on, because you're not done. The fact of the matter is, like, okay, it sucks now, and it might not look perfect or even good now, but the thing is, you can keep going. And I feel like, again, I have to mention, this is all done without using Control-Z once, lines that I put down are lines that stay, no matter what. If I make a part darker than I meant to, if I apply a line I didn't mean to, like that one line on the right side of her lip, like, I don't even remember putting down that line, and I don't like it, but it stays there. And I think it might compliment her a little bit. It looks like a cut, I guess, but I didn't want that line being there, and it has to stay. Except in cases where my tablet glitches out, then I delete them, but those are very few and far in between anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But any mistake I make, like, oh god, I don't like how that looks, well, too bad. There's nothing I can do about that now. I feel like that's a good reference to what I'm trying to say. Like, if you have something that you're not feeling at all, you're not really feeling how something's turning out, just press on. Keep going at it, and it actually might shape into something that you do like, because you already have the basis for it. You're just pressing on. It doesn't look good now, but you also have to consider it's not finished. You're not done, and I think that's a good philosophy to live by. I usually do it when it comes to drawings, and I don't know. I think that also applies to certain aspects of life. It's like, oh, my life sucks right now. It's like, well, yeah, but you're not done. This isn't over. You have to be like a cheesy movie villain. This isn't over. But I think probably one of the hardest things to do was the shading because, like the left side of her face is just so dark in the reference photo I had, and just I didn't know if I wanted to make it darker, if I wanted to leave it lighter. There were parts of it that looked really empty. Her blouse had so many frills, and I did the best with what I had, and I was like, I don't want to go overboard and then just have it look like nothing, so I'm just going to leave it as is, and, you know, maybe people will understand what it is. I think the little prints on her pajama are like hearts. I think that's what they're supposed to be, but I was like, if I, you know, take my time to meticulously do every single little heart, it's like, I'll be here forever, and I'd rather not. But yeah, other exorcism movies that I've seen, I don't really think I've seen any other ones. And to think that, like, the movie was inspired on at least somewhat inspired on true events, like, that's even more bizarre. Do I like the movie? I like the second half of it. The first half is really hard to sit through because nothing's really happening. They're just setting up for the latter half. But in terms of the special effects, in terms of the makeup, in terms of all of that, like, I think it holds up. Like, I've always been fucking terrified of Regan's design. It's Regan. I go between pronouncing it both ways. But I've always been terrified of her design. Like, I remember there was one time when cell phones were becoming more of a thing, a friend of mine lent me his cell phone. I don't remember what for, but I took it home. And I was browsing through his files, and there was one video file, and it was a jump scare. It was like one of the first jump scares that I'd ever come across. It was just this rocking chair, and I was like, what the hell's going on? What's this rocking chair doing? And then all of a sudden, boom, Regan's face just jumps out at me. I threw that fucking phone, and I almost broke his phone. Because that's how scared I was. That's how much it scared me. I was like, oh my god, I shouldn't have opened that file. But yeah, I did have a lot of fun drawing this, although it was probably the one that took me the longest, and it was the one I struggled definitely the most with, because, oh, it's just so deep. I was really looking forward to drawing it. This is the final result. I really wanted to do it because, to me, I think she's probably going to be one of the most detailed characters that I've drawn so far, and that I'm going to draw this Inktober. But I did the best with what I had. I did the best I could. One of the things I hate about this drawing, and you might notice it too, her chin. Like, at first I felt like her face was way too short, and then I made the chin, it's like, oh, now it's like way too long. She has a big-ass chin. But either way, I like what I did with it. I hope you do too. And tomorrow, we'll go for a way more simpler design. I won't spoil it for you guys right now. It's another really iconic movie villain, but you'll have to wait until tomorrow to see who it is. So until next time, this is Char5, signing off.